So Stasis was meant to get its long awaited rebirth this season in Season of the Wish, but what actually happened? We all know that Solar has been flavour of the month thanks to how strong Radiant is through the seasonal artifact. In one of the blog posts before Season of the Wish, we were actually given a bit of an insight into what had changed. However, I think the biggest change means that Shatterdive is back, and it's all because of the Glacier Grenade, which has had its cooldown reduced from 152 seconds to 121 seconds, which, if you pair it with certain builds, certain mods, and certain aspects and fragments, you can get these grenades back super quick. And although it's not like what Shatterdive was when Stasis was first released over 3 years ago, it's still super strong and it's going to wipe out tons of enemies. Well, I think that the Hunter is probably one of the best Stasis builds at the minute, and there's a ton of great weapons to choose from. Arguably the best one at the minute is probably the Eyes Luna, the Stasis hand cannon from the Grasp of Avarice dungeon. I like to meme with mine by putting sweaty confetti on along with headstone just for a little bit of fun, but the Stasis crystals that it produces are actually really good and have some great synergy with the artifact mods this season. Headstone on a hand cannon is super good, and the main reason because of that is because of the Whisper of Fissures. You're going to constantly click heads using a hand cannon, and the Stasis one with headstone makes Stasis crystals like there's no tomorrow, and you're going to massively increase the damage of it with the Whisper of Fissures. And I know that everyone's favourite at the minute is causing ignitions with hand cannons like Zuli's Bane or Sunshot, but once you get this going with a decent Stasis build and you're using headstone, you're popping Stasis crystals everywhere and you're destroying them, the damage that they cause is definitely comparable to the destruction that you can do with ignition damage. Plus, don't forget that anything that is frozen or touched by either a Stasis crystal will technically freeze them, so that's going to trigger your Whisper of Hedrons, and Whisper of Hedrons again a super slept on Stasis fragment, because not only does it give you increased weapon stability, weapon aim assist and airborne effectiveness, which doesn't matter too much at the minute, but it also massively increases your mobility, resilience and recovery for a significant amount of time. And this just isn't a little bit of mobility, a little bit of resilience, a little bit of recovery. You're getting 60 stat points to your mobility, your resilience and your recovery. So I mean, if you're looking at my build, we've got what, 53 mobility, 96 resilience and 58 recovery. All of these are effectively maxed out at 100 when Whisper of Hedrons is active, and in a good Stasis build like this one, everything is going to be frozen or slowed at any point, and that stat boost is always active, which on a Hunter means you're going to get your Gambler's Dodge back, which ultimately means you're going to get your Withering Blade back so you can chuck them out, and it is just a vicious cycle that helps to set everything up. Like I said, we're leaning in with Shatterdive on this one. With my Hunter, I do like to lean in with high discipline builds. As you can see, I've got a 94 stat, but that's also boosted by the Whisper of Shards, which gives an increase to that regen rate on shattering Stasis crystals, so you are getting your Glacier Grenade back a lot quicker. But the main reason you want to use your primary is because of the Whisper of Rending. This does massively increase damage to the Stasis crystals. It reduces the amount of times you have to actually shoot a Stasis crystal for it to shatter. It also allows your primary weapon to do more damage to frozen targets. It's super slept on, and it makes these primary weapons, especially hand cannons at the minute, which have had tons of tuning, tons of buffs, tons of updates, super strong. And I think the only reason probably Eyes Luna doesn't get used so much is because it's not being updated with the new origin traits, which, given how popular it has been in the past, I would imagine that it's going to be getting an update with an origin trait soon, again to make that dungeon relevant and to also make all of them weapons relevant. Again though, all these Stasis crystals that you're going to be creating are going to be boosted even more from the artifact with Pillar of Ice, which is going to spawn more Stasis crystals on defeating frozen targets. And like we said, any target that is touched by the spawning of the Stasis crystals from either Headstone or from your Grayseal Grenade or even from double tapping people with your Withering Blade, they're going to be frozen, and defeating them is going to spawn Stasis crystals, which then on top of that, shattering the Stasis crystals is going to spawn a burst of Stasis crystals which release shards that damage targets and also slow them. This is probably underrated, but again it affects the amount of damage that the Stasis crystals are causing, and definitely means that you can freeze a lot more targets, and is really generally comparable to the damage caused by ignitions and also obviously the unraveling rounds and threadlings which are on the artifact too. overdue this season. But then on top of that, we've got a little bit of synergy with Dragon's Bite as well, which means you can use any strand or stasis weapon, and obviously we're looking at stasis weapons. So if we break a combatant's shield with a stasis weapon, whether that's your primary weapon or your heavy weapon of choice, there's a small chance that breaking their shield is just going to freeze them, which then is going to chain Pillar of Ice and then ultimately Hail the Storm, and it is just pretty much a vicious circle of stasis ice shards going everywhere once you get it rolling. Now that's not all, because one of my favourite exotics to pair with a stasis build, especially on hunters, is the Mask of Bakris. Now this has had a massive buff. I think it was last season, it may have been the season before, but essentially the light shift ability has been updated so that once you use it, you get a 4 times weapon damage boost, which is the full 25% damage boost to both your stasis and arc weapons for a short duration. Now unfortunately this doesn't stack with your weapon surges on your leg armor, so I definitely recommend running Stasis Surge just to keep that damage boost topped up. You can only run 3 unfortunately, which is only going to be 22%, but that paired again with the Whisper of Rending is just going to destroy a lot of enemies. Now obviously you're not going to get your light shift back quickly, because once light shift is active it actually stops your class ability from regenerating, but that again is why we're using the Whisper of Hedrons to speed that up, so you don't have to use a maxed out mobility stat. You can rely on that stasis build to get you that maxed out regen, and you're going to be getting your class ability back in probably less than 20 seconds if you're running this build properly. And like we said, it's all about chaining your abilities, so from whether you're getting the Whisper of Shards to get your stasis grenades back quicker, or if you're using your Gambler's Dodge to get your Withering Blade back quicker, it's all going to help in causing maximum chaos, maximum carnage, maximum freezing on all the trash ads, and then it's going to leave you chance to then pair it with your heavy weapon of choice to deal with either champions, mini bosses or bosses. And don't forget, some of the stasis supers are actually really good damage over time supers in terms of boss DPS. I know that not everyone likes to use the Silence and Squall super on the Revenant, but it actually does do some effective damage. It more so staggers enemies from that for a period of time, and essentially it's a one and done super, so you can pop it, throw it at your enemy, and then you can literally move to your heavy weapon of choice, whether that's the massive Choid, the Cold Comfort rocket launcher, which again has tons of synergy with the artifact this season in terms of dealing with overload champions, or even getting stacks of armor charge, or you can use the Winter Bite, which again had a bit of an update to make it more consistent, or you've even got the Chain of Command, which is basically going to allow you to deal with barrier champions because of the adaptive munitions perk, or you can even pair with it a really good arc weapon, especially if you're going to chuck in a light dodge from the Mask of Bakris, whether that's a linear fusion like Storm Chaser, a rocket launcher like the Hothead, or even the exotic machine gun Grand Overture, which again is still one of the best boss DPS machine guns in the entire game, and for some reason I don't see anybody using it this season, but it is super strong and it is super good. And if you're using it with the Mask of Bakris, you get a 25% damage boost on top of any buffs or debuffs from your fire team, whether you're in a Well of Radiance or somebody's used a Tether or a Tractor or something. Like Grand Overture paired with Mask of Bakris is going to melt the faces off of some enemies. It is a super good little setup. And then if that wasn't enough and you weren't getting enough damage out, you can chuck in your favourite solar energy weapon, whether that's a fusion rifle or whatever, and you can look at setting up some radiant from the artifact, whether that's through Flint Striker, so that you're getting either rapid solar precision hits or rapid solar final blows, and that'll grant radiant, which you're probably not going to be able to chain as often, but if you're wanting to tee it up to stack with some of your weapon surges for a boss damage phase, definitely something you can look at doing by getting out your favourite energy weapon just to get that extra 25% damage on top. All in all, Stasis, it's still good. It'll do bits in the dungeon, it'll do bits in the coil. Running raids, you'll be fine. Doing Grandmaster Nightfalls, in fact, doing Grandmaster Nightfalls Stasis is still S tier. I mean, just the ability to stop targets is way more valuable in my opinion for that type of activity, especially if you can chain that with your fire team. Let me know if you've been using some Stasis builds this season, what you've been running, what you've been using, if it in your eyes is better than what the solar stuff has or the strand stuff has going at the minute. I feel it's a little bit harsh, the opinion that Stasis is like the forgotten love child of Destiny 2. It kind of is, but it kind of isn't. I just think it goes a little bit under the radar because everything has kind of moved on, but Stasis can still do it. It can still do the thing. So yeah, just let me know what you think, and also let me know what you think about these videos. They're a little bit different. I am feeling a little bit under the weather, so the voice does sound a little bit croaky, but so yeah, we keep going, we keep trying, and thank you very much.